Just calm down, folks. Just calm down.
And welcome in to the Best Boys Center Ice podcast and the 2025 Stanley Cup playoffs wrap-up show for tonight, Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals. And now we can say officially, we've been talking about it for a few days, the Florida Panthers are making their third trip to the Stanley Cup Final after a 5-3 victory over the Carolina Hurricanes in Raleigh, North Carolina tonight. It was inevitable, I think. We looked at it, Carson, from the beginning of this series, and we just saw that Carolina wasn't even in the ballpark, weren't even in the arena.
Well, not both of us. You said they were going to win.
Carolina, yeah, I did. At the beginning, I did say Carolina was going to beat Florida because I really thought Florida was, going deep into the playoffs 3 years in a row. Might have been, the legs might not have been with them, but boy, I tell you what, this Florida Panther team is the team of the moment. You said it just before we went on live. They're the team to beat. It's going to be hard to beat this team the way that they play with the new additions that they have. Bob in net. It's going to take some luck. It's going to take, whether it's Edmonton or Dallas, it's going to take some hard work in the offensive zone and in the defensive zone. You're going to have to play a full 60 minutes against the Florida Panthers if you want to dethrone them as the Stanley Cup champions.
You didn't do your intro.
Oh yeah, that's right. And we are on the Best Boys Center Ice podcast YouTube channel, which is up to date with all of the 2025 Stanley
Cup. I got to keep you accountable.
I know, Tony. I know we got to pay the bills. The 2025 Stanley Cup playoff wrap-up show, and you can get the Best Boys Center Ice podcast on YouTube, on the Refocused Radio Network, and along with us, there's Sweep the League with Rudy Campos Jr., and also the I Am Refocused Radio podcast with Shamaya Reed. Go check them out. A lot of other great shows, a lot of other great things coming up on the Refocused Radio Network as well. You can get us on Spreaker as well, just the audio portion. But like I said, you may want to check out the video portion because Carson's got some great graphics that he shows with shot charts, and he's got the great intro. So, Spreaker is good if you don't if you're in your car or whatever. But I would say the Best Boys Center Ice podcast YouTube channel, and subscribe while you're there as well. Now we can move on officially to Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Final. So Carson, you said it right from the start. You were the one that said, I just don't see anybody beating Florida. They had an off game the other night in Game 4. Now, I must say, Carolina did come out. They came out rolling with a couple of goals in the first period by Sebastian Aho. But then, it was time for Florida to do what they do, and they took over in the second period. Matthew Tkachuk, Evan Rodriguez, your former Penguin, and Lundell got his fifth. So it was 3-2 Florida going into the third period. Now, a little bit of life from Carolina at about the 8:30 mark. Seth Jarvis got his sixth, but then just within a couple of minutes later, Carter Verhaeghe kind of put the nail in the coffin. Sam Bennett coming out of the penalty box at the empty netter. Bob gets another great win, and the Carolina Hurricanes lose to the Florida Panthers. Florida now going to the Stanley Cup Final for the third year in a row.
Well, I knew this was going to happen. I mean, I said Florida was going to beat them. I just think that Carolina's they played too long playing their way. And this best game they had this series was Game 5 when they didn't really play that much defense. They were just focused on the offensive zone, and that's what led to them having success in this game and doing pretty well. But the beginning of the series, what threw them off was just they were trying to out-defense the Panthers, and it doesn't work that way the farther you go in the playoffs. And they're done. Season's over early again. pretty interesting ending to that game is there was some heated conversation between Brenda Moore and Paul Maurice. I don't know what that was about, but they were not very pleased with each other, to say the least. I'm not sure what about. It could be that Sam Bennett, according to many, tried to elbow Freddie Anderson in the head, which I don't know. I didn't really see it, but that's what I heard. Nonetheless, Florida's back where they belong in the Stanley Cup Final again, and for the sixth straight season, a Florida team represents the Eastern Conference, which is crazy. That's the state of hockey now.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah. So now, as what you always want, what you always do, and what every hockey analyst does at the end of a series, what do the Carolina Hurricanes have to do to get over that hump and get themselves back to the Stanley Cup Final?
Forget the defense. I mean, they're a good defensive team already, but forget the defense. Forget playing that way. It's not going to work. It works in the regular season, it works in divisional play, but it does not work the further you go in the playoffs. They have to abandon that mentality and put the puck in the net. As good as a defensive team as the Panthers are, they scored a lot of goals this series. They did. They scored 5 goals in all of their wins. 5 goals or more in all of their wins.
Yeah.
That's they scored, and the Canes didn't until really today. They didn't score much anything, and that's the difference. I think the Canes have just, like I've said, I've kind of compared them to the Islanders. They play that kind of game. They play that trap defensive game where they're fine winning every game 1-0 if they can. And it doesn't the NHL and the modern day NHL, it's not like that anymore. You can't do that. And the Canes just wait way too long to abandon that mentality. And it's the reason that they can make it past the first round or two because they're playing either divisional or weaker teams. But then they get further on into the playoffs and you play a juggernaut team like Florida who's going to like expose that. And even in some of these games, they could only get 20, 25 shots, but it didn't matter. They'd score so much because they figured out how to break through when it mattered. Uh, to be fair, I really think if Toronto would have advanced, it could have been the same kind of thing because I think Toronto would have exposed that same kind of defensive flaw. So I think that the Canes either need to maybe think about changing something up behind the bench or changing the way that they run their team. Like, forget the defense. Defense is not going to get us there anymore. It's proven that it's not going to. We have to play offense now. So we're not going to be trapping the neutral zone as much anymore. Their defensive game is still really good, even if they abandon that mentality. But until they do, they'll never win. They will not win until they abandon that mentality of out defensing everybody else and hoping that it makes them there. It's not going to. The only way it would is if you're able to get um, like a Bob or Vasilevsky, which no hate on Freddie Anderson, but he's not that guy. He's not one of those guys.
Right.
But that's just my opinion. I think they just need to forget the defense and try to get some offensive weapons around. Now they've tried twice in a row, 2 seasons in a row. Jake Gensel and now Mika Rantanen both gone. So I'm wondering if those guys get there and they don't feel like that they can play in that system because of that's how they play. And I think that the Canes are a bit stubborn where they don't want to change that. And so really big name free agents don't want to go there because they know they're going to have to play a lot of defense and they can't really focus on offense, which I really think is what's probably happened. So they've definitely missed the mark on that 2 seasons in a row. And I think enough's enough. You got to change that up. You can't play that way anymore to win the Stanley Cup. And it's proven for that team.
Yeah. Okay. I've got 2 questions for you. It pertains to the Florida Panthers. All right. First question. If you're the Florida Panthers, who's a harder team to play against, the Edmonton Oilers or the Dallas Stars for Florida? Who's going to give them more of a challenge, the Oilers or the Stars?
I think the Oilers, but I think if I'm Florida, I want to play the Oilers more because you already beat them. And I mean, they have that taste in their mouth. They want to get them back and beat them again. Honestly, I'd be wanting to play Edmonton if I'm Florida. I mean, I really think that in that series, it's tough to say, but I think that they have the upper hand. I really do. I mean, Bob's a Stanley Cup champion. Most of the players on that team are Stanley Cup champions. Edmonton has maybe one, Corey Perry, that's won a Stanley Cup. They have that experience. I think they'll have a tougher time with Edmonton, but I think they'll want to play Edmonton more. Dallas, on the other hand, I think that's also a different challenge for the Panthers if their big guns can wake up. That's not easy to contain.
Right.
but I think you're rooting for Dallas, honestly, at this point to get some more rest. I think see if they can win the next game or two, and but yeah, that to answer your first question, I think Edmonton's a tougher one for them to play.
Okay, so now my second question: how how strong and how can the Florida Panthers can they continue this on past this season to be the dominant team in the East for a few years to come? Can they, or they've kind of like, are they at the end of their little rope here?
I don't I don't really think they're at the end of the rope yet. I mean, they've done well in free agency and they've done well in the offseason. They lose guys and they get guys back that fit right in the mold. Uh, Obviously, this offseason, I think Sam Bennett's going to be gone. He's going to get paid and leave. But I think they do such a great job at just retooling and refilling the lineup. This is going to be a Florida team that's going to be good for a while, I think. And they don't really have anybody that's, in their upper 30s, early 40s. The closest to it is probably really Bob, who's in his 30s, and Marchand. But I don't know. It's hard for me not to say right now the Florida Panthers don't win the cup again because they've proven a lot of people wrong. I think a lot of people like myself had Tampa Bay beating them right off the bat, and it didn't happen. And they've pretty much rolled through two of these series. Uh, it's going to be a tough challenge to beat them, and I think it marks a turning point for both Western teams should they lose to Florida. Honestly, I think it really does.
All
It's
right.
it's
Sorry, you keep going.
yeah, I think that's my opinion. I think it really marks a turning point for both of those teams. They have more to lose than the Panthers do at this point.
Yeah.
So the Panthers, I think they'll really go in, even though they're the reigning Stanley Cup champions, they're going to have the least pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So if Edmonton makes it, all the noise that's going to be around Edmonton, McDavid still hasn't won a Stanley Cup, Draisaitl doesn't want a Stanley Cup. They haven't proven anything. Versus the same thing with Dallas. Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin. Well, Seguin has a cup, but they've been so close so many times and they haven't done anything.
Mm-hmm.
The pressure is going to be on the Western teams, not on Florida. Even though they're the reigning champs, there's no pressure on that team, and they're gonna go through here. And I want to say, if Dallas wins, that they will have home ice. But if Florida wins, or if Edmonton wins, I think Florida has home ice again. I think is how it's going to roll. What were you going to ask before I went over?
Well, no, I was just going to say, I kind of agree. Like, I think Florida, like, I can't see a team that can come out of the East right now.
Mm-mm.
You look at the top 8 teams in the East. I can't see any of them being able to take Florida right now. The only thing that my thing, if the team, like you said, Bennett goes, a couple other players maybe go, they have to rebuild a little bit, but that team is a very strong team, and I think they are going to be a strong team for a while in the East. I don't think we've seen a team like this. I know Tampa Bay, was a great team, and you've got some other teams down the road. Pittsburgh a few years ago were a dominant team and
Making the playoffs all the time, but
making
I
the
don't,
playoffs.
I don't know.
I don't know, but I just I'm happy for Florida. After losing that first Stanley Cup to Vegas, winning in that kind of a nail biter where they were up 3-0 and almost were the wrong part of history against the Edmonton Oilers last year, and now going back to the Stanley Cup Final. That's a difficult thing to do in this day and age. The New York Islanders went and won 4 Stanley Cups in a row. That doesn't happen anymore.
But look at how many games the Panthers have had to play. I mean, good God, they've played, over 300 games in the last 3 seasons. That's a lot of hockey, and they don't look. Anytime they've been faced with adversity, for the most part, they've pushed back and they've just taken it over. Anytime they've been faced with adversity, it looked not good against the Maple Leafs in round 2, and they came back and won that series. Uh, they were behind the 8 ball against the Lightning at the beginning. People counted them out. That they went in a hard place to play in Carolina and won every game. That's the team to beat, but they're also the team with the least pressure right now because they have nothing to prove. They've already proven everything. They've won. I don't know.
Well, I think it's going to be whoever gets in to play Florida. It's going to be a really great series. Now, we to determine who's going to be playing the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup Final is the Western Conference Final. And right now, the Edmonton Oilers have a 3-1 lead on the Dallas Stars with Game 5 in Dallas tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Central Time. The Oilers, they say, up 3-1. Edmonton's won in Dallas before in this series. They're coming off 3 very strong games where they only gave up 2 goals to Dallas. The Dallas big guys haven't shown up yet, and that's the thing. The later the series goes, these big guys are going to show up, and it's just inevitable. You can't keep these guys down for too very long at all, and it's the same with any team. Your superstars may have a little bit of a slump, but you can't keep them down for long. I guess I'll start with this one again. The biggest thing for both of us, I think, is what Stuart Skinner are you going to get? What 74 are you going to get between the pipes? Are you going to get the first 2 games of the LA series, or are you going to get the guy who's got 3 shutouts in the last his last 4 games or whatever it is? Who are you going to get? We know that the depth scoring is there for the Oilers, which it's really never been before since the teams of the 80s. We know that the defense is much, much better now. Now, I heard a little bit of a rumor. I don't know if it's true or not, but that Mattias Ekholm could be available for Game 5 tomorrow night in Dallas. Now, of course, he hasn't played since 4 Nations. I think that's where he got hurt playing for Team Sweden. So he's not going to be 100%, even if he does get into the lineup. But I think a Mattias Ekholm sighting on the bench and maybe only playing 10 minutes instead of his normal, I think he gets like 22 minutes a game, something like that, will help Edmonton. But now,
I don't think you play him.
You don't think so?
Nope. I think the Oilers have been rolling without him. Keep him rested for the Cup Final, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
They're that close. If it gets to the point where they lose Game 5, then yeah, maybe roll him. But I don't think you do it tomorrow.
No.
I think you keep rolling the way you have been. It might throw the team off a little bit if he's playing, just the dynamic of everything. But, I mean, like you said, it won't hurt, but I don't think it's the best decision.
Mm-hmm.
I think you just keep rolling with how it's been. Get him an extra couple days rest, and he can be that much more ready to go.
Right.
But it's up to how he feels tomorrow. I mean, he's a hockey player. He's going to want to get in if he can. But I think it's a smart thing for the organization where they're not in a panic or pressure situation. Keep him out. Let him just rest. Get him a good skate tomorrow. Have him in the dressing room,
Mm-hmm.
hopping on the bike. Doing whatever he needs to do, getting PT in, and being ready to go. But it's all up to their decisions tomorrow. This is going to be a hard Dallas team to beat tomorrow. Their season's on the line. A lot of questions going around that team if they lose. Jamie Benn, what's going to happen to him? Guys like that, what's going to happen? They have a lot to prove, and they're not going to be going down easy. This is going to be a hard game, but it's, we haven't seen the best out of Jake Ottinger yet, but the biggest difference is what 74 is there, because Dallas has had plenty of scoring opportunities.
Yep.
They haven't converted on him, but all it takes is one game for it to turn around. And this is a Dallas team that is very capable to win 3 games in a row.
Yeah.
No team in the Western Conference Finals has ever won 3 games in a row to come back and win the series. But there's any team that can do it, it's Dallas. And Edmonton's got to play on their toes. Don't sit back, because look what happened in Game 1. Like we said, don't dwell on it, but remember what happened, because that fell apart in a matter of minutes. They got to stay disciplined, both teams. But Dallas improved 5-on-5. Edmonton's been the better team on special teams. I think tomorrow's going to be goal fest. I think Dallas is due for a breakout scoring game at this point.
Well, yeah.
They're due for a 4 or 5 goal game, and I think if you're Edmonton, you just kind of got to prepare for that and prepare Stu for that. As good as he's been, don't be surprised if it happens. And it's not on the defense. Maybe it'll be on Stu, depending on what kind of goals go in, but this is a Dallas team that is more than capable. And not, again, just to rally you up, I just have a hard time believing Dallas goes down in 5. I think they grind it out and get it done. However, it'd be amazing if Edmonton happens to win it tomorrow and be done. But yeah, I have Dallas forcing Game 6. Just think they have too much to play for, too much pride to lose like that. I think Ottinger is going to be money in the bank. He's going to be ready. He wants to go to the Cup final and try to win a Stanley Cup. And they've got to do it one game at a time here. Don't look to Game 6 or Game 7. Look at Game 5. And, I feel like that's what they've been doing the past couple of games is looking to the next game. They got to look to this game. Doesn't matter. If they lose, it's over. Win that game. You've lived to fight another day. That's it.
Right. Well, no, I'm sticking with my guns. And I'm sticking with the Oilers taking this in 5. But, I do believe that, Dallas is.
Like you wouldn't be shocked if Dallas won.
No, I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be shocked. I would not be shocked. No, I'm going for the Oilers to pull this one out in 5. But I would not be shocked if we go back to Edmonton to play Game 6. These two teams have been so entertaining to watch over the last couple of years. In the conference final, we got to see them up close and personal a few times over the years. And Dallas is hungry. They're hungry. They want to get back to the Stanley Cup final. They got there a few years ago, and they didn't win it. And
that was the start of the Tampa. That was the start of the Florida dynasties. Yep. Is Tampa won their first cup against them, and they've been so close.
Mm-hmm.
They've been consistently close, but they haven't jumped it. And this season, this is their best chance up to this point because they really were the big team at free agency or at the trade deadline. Every year there's that team that makes a big splash, and Dallas was that team this year that did that. I think tomorrow's time for, I don't even want to say for him to wake up because he's been one of their more efficient players with Mikko to step up. Mm-hmm. Robertson's found his touch. That's going to be another guy to watch. I'm interested to see Wyatt Johnston have a breakout game tomorrow night. He's been under some scrutiny for his plus minus. He hasn't been really too great since the Colorado series.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for a breakout game from him, and I can't see Dallas losing at home tomorrow night. I really can't. And that's not just to go against you. They're that good of a team. Yeah, they are so good, and I want to see more of this series, to be honest. I really do.
They're one of the elite teams, not only in the West, but they're one of the elite teams in the NHL. And it's just going to be a great game either way. Yep. It's going to be a great game when these two teams hit the ice. Mm-hmm. And they hit the ice at 7 o'clock Central Time tomorrow. We'll be on probably about this time tomorrow. And we'll be on with the wrap-up show of Game 5 of the Western Conference Final. And, we will, of course, now we will have a couple of evenings off.
When the series is over, it'll be, no matter what, after tomorrow, we won't have a show on Friday. Should Edmonton win, we probably will be off, I bet you, for, I imagine, 5 days or so. I think they'll probably want to sync it up with the NBA Finals.
Mm-hmm.
Where one night's NBA Finals, next night's Stanley Cup Final. Probably. So I imagine we'll probably, if anything, if it's over tomorrow, because there's only the Indiana New York series is up still. The Western Conference has been won in the NBA. So I imagine, I would say Wednesday or Thursday is the start of the Stanley Cup Final because you have to imagine they give them some time to travel, practice a little bit. And I don't want to see any more afternoon games. This is over. I don't want to see any more 2 o'clock game. But this is going to be very entertaining. We've still really got about 3.5 weeks left of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, this is going to be a great Stanley Cup final, whether it's Florida and Dallas, Florida and Edmonton. It's going to be entertaining. More great storylines either way for Western teams who haven't won a Stanley Cup in a while, and Florida to maybe be the next dynasty if they win again. They're on their way to doing great things for a while. They could be reminiscent of the New York Islanders.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that's my take, as much as I want my Penguins back in the winning column again, but Florida's unbelievable. I think watching them, they're better than the Tampa teams that were really killing it.
Mm-hmm.
It was different circumstances back then, the bubble, no excuses there. Obviously they won fair and square. But then the alignments were so much different in 2021. They played Montreal in the Cup Final, which was so weird. I just think that I look at this Florida team, I think they're just a bit better but it's unbelievable what we're watching. That's history. I mean, 3 straight Cup finals in a row, and they've just been able to cycle people in and out. It's very, very great. But at the same time, we know McDavid needs his cup. We know Jamie Benn needs his cup. I don't know. It's great either way, no matter who gets it done.
Yeah. So we'll find out about this time tomorrow whether we have a Stanley Cup Final matchup or whether we go to Game
I
6
think we're going to
in
Game 6.
Edmonton on Saturday night. Well, we're going to wrap things up for tonight. You can get all of the 2025 Stanley Cup playoff wrap-up shows from the Best Boys Center Ice podcast YouTube channel on the Refocus Radio Network. Again, thanks, Carson. I like all the new graphics. And see, we got the Florida Panthers in the spot of the Eastern Conference champions. And we'll see who goes up into the Western Conference champion spot.
We'll see either a frown or a smile tomorrow. One of the two.
We'll see if it's a smile or a frown. And either way, you know what? Either way, my smiling because I get to watch some great hockey, and you can't go wrong with that at all. So again, thanks, Carson, for everything. And in the meantime, and in between time, everybody have a great hockey night.